Hi, I'm Mokoso, and I'm your host for the Share My Experience podcast. My vision blurred as I watched the water flow through the canal below the bridge where I stood. All I could see was water. There was too much water. I couldn't tell if I was just looking at it or if my eyes were full of it. I wiped the tears that I unsuccessfully tried to hold back before they fell. I don't really care anyway, I said out loud. It's even better for us. My best friend reached out and put her hand across my shoulders. She rubbed the side of my arm and whispered, "It's okay. It's going to be okay. You have me." Yes, I had her, and my other friends, and my siblings, and my mother. So my father could go wherever he wanted to. He could go straight to hell for all I cared. That's what I told myself for months now. That I didn't care that he had just upped and left our family. I just found out from my auntie that he had married another wife and had a new family. He'd been gone for a while now, and I thought I'd gotten used to not having him in my life. That's why I was both angered and confused by my tears. Why was I crying? Why did my heart feel like it was being squeezed by a very big and angry fist? It's not like I love him or missed him in any way. I'd gotten used to the fact that he didn't live with us anymore. So why was this news as devastating as the first time my mother told me that he had moved out of the house? I recalled all the times that I sat outside the door of what used to be my parents' room and listened to the heart-wrenching sobs coming from the other side. I closed my eyes and imagined my mother lying on the floor beside the white, shaggy rug that lay at the foot of their bed, crying her heart out. In the beginning, I'd cry along with her silently, begging God to turn my father's heart and bring him back home to us. But as the months progressed, I went from joining in her sadness to just distancing myself from it. I felt pity at first, then mild disgust that she was still pining for a man that had tossed her away like a piece of rubbish. That could never be me, I said to myself. I would never mourn over any man like this, and for this long. I would simply move on. That's what I told myself, over and over again. My siblings and I quickly got used to the fact that there was no man in the house, and that our household, as we'd known it, had been irrevocably changed. It was now an all-female household, which to me was both a joy and a nightmare. When my father was around, there was order and relative calm, because at the faintest hint of ruckus, his booming voice would yell out, "What is going on in my house?" And everyone would calm down and behave themselves. Also, no boys dared come near our house to visit. Even my elder sister, who was 20 years old at the time, wasn't allowed male visitors, though we all knew that she had plenty of guys interested in her. Toasters, as we'd call them back then. How things had changed. My mother was liberal and didn't have the heart to be strict with us. It was very evident that she overcompensated for our father leaving. I wondered if she ever felt like it was her fault. Eventually, she slowly came to grips with the fact that she had lost her husband to another woman and her children. And after finally giving up on him ever returning, she focused her attention on becoming the sole provider and the only one capable of raising us. She just didn't know how, bless her. It's only in retrospect that I realized how my father's absence from our lives affected each of us. It wasn't obvious at first, but we'd all internalized his departure from our household, and it manifested differently in each person. My mother did the best that she could, but she was often overwhelmed. Raising 5 girls by herself wasn't the easiest task. I had a friend once who described our home as a constant battlefield. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't too far from the truth. There always seemed to be conflict, raised voices, cold wars, and silent battles. However, the moments of camaraderie, unity, understanding, and shared tenderness weren't few and far between. We loved each other fiercely. We just didn't always agree. After my father left, my older siblings became rebellious and pretty much did what they liked, but never disrespectfully and never in front of our mother. But it didn't change the fact that they did questionable things that reflected badly on her and on us as a family. People had talked a lot about our ordeal, and of course, there were many eyes on us and people constantly in our business. My oldest sister gained quite the reputation for dating older, rich, and married men. She liked the finer things in life, and my mother, even though she worked hard and tried her best, could barely take care of all five of us, including herself, let alone give her, my sister, the luxuries that she believed that she needed. Granted, life was way better when my father was around. At first, I wondered if my mother knew what my sister was up to. As the firstborn, she had taken up the responsibility of supporting my mother with taking care of the rest of us. She had a job in a bank, and I had no idea how much she earned, but I was convinced that there was glamour and wealth in the world of banking because of her lifestyle. I even decided that I wanted to be a banker when I grew up. Because of her job, she helped my mother with the heavy lifting, and I wanted to be able to do that too. One day, my sister came home from work with a brand new car, which she claimed to have gotten from the bank for being one of the top performers in her unit. Anytime she brought home something new and expensive, it was always from work, mostly from big commissions she had gotten for bringing in new accounts. Thanks to her, all the old furniture in our flat got changed and the appliances were upgraded. She was really my hero. But I heard the whispers in the neighborhood. And I also saw some of these visitors that came to see her but never came into the house for a proper visit. I knew something was off. With my parents, I tried to stay neutral when it came to handling them. I didn't have much contact with my dad after he left, mostly because I felt like I owed my mother loyalty. It was almost an unspoken expectation that her daughters would be on her side and show her solidarity and prove their allegiance by severing all ties with the man who had left her to take care of them. It was a very difficult place to be because I had moments where I missed my dad terribly and wished that he was there for me. Sometimes I secretly admired my younger sister's bravery in openly embracing her relationship with my father. She didn't care. I knew that sometimes she visited him secretly and had a few gifts from him that she lied were from someone else. She was the only one who pursued and maintained an active relationship with my father, and it was a cause of contention in the household. Some viewed her as a traitor and were distrustful of her, especially when it came to information about our dealings as a family. You see, my parents' separation wasn't exactly amicable. My mother tried to hit him where it hurt after he left by selling some of the properties they had in their name and owned together. And of course, this caused a lot of tension and legal battles. And in those times, the family was divided. My second-born sister took our parents' breakup the hardest. When, after years of missing in action, my father resurfaced to try and renew his relationship with us, his children, she was the only one that was unreceptive to his invitation to connect. She's the only one that still doesn't have a relationship with him. One would think that this made her the one that was most loyal to our mother. But that was just the opposite. She blamed my mother for my father's departure and essentially made her life and everyone else in the household a living hell. She was moody, rebellious, stubborn, and rude. She acted out terribly and got violent quite often, Also, she hung out with the wrong crowd for a while. Eventually, she moved out of the house to live with her wealthy boyfriend and his family. This was hard on everyone. We were all sad, but relieved when she left, even though we knew that she was doing things the wrong way, but no one could get through to her. Luckily, they were a good, warm, and accommodating family who spoilt their only son by giving him whatever he wanted. So they essentially mediated and accepted the sweet and broken girl, in quotes, into their family. Although I can bet all my savings that they weren't too thrilled about it. The whole debacle shamed and embarrassed my mother, and although she tried to fight against it, she finally accepted that her daughter had essentially rejected her, and she let her be. It was hard, not only for her, but for the rest of us. I don't think my parents fully understood the enormity of the effects of their broken marriage on us, their children, as individuals and as a collective. Our once loving family suddenly morphed into this fragmented household, marked by strife, rancor, and distrust. Every action had to be carefully weighed to determine how it would be perceived and interpreted by both parents. It was near impossible to be neutral, especially as a teenager who didn't understand marriage, but was now forced to judge between two adults who told two different sides of the same story. There was an endless battle to determine who was right and who was wrong. And the jockeying for acceptance and affection by both parents was truly sad and pitiful. I often felt like I was torn in 3 different directions at every turn. My mother's, my father's, and mine. It was exhausting. And here's the afterword. Abandonment can be deliberate, but also involuntary. When parents die, children feel abandoned. Almost all the time, if they had a choice, they'll choose to live and be there for their parents. But the subject of death isn't up for negotiation. However, when there is voluntary abandonment, it's a whole different ballgame. In my opinion, teenagers aren't as resilient as younger children when they experience tragedy, such as their parents breaking up. The years are already difficult enough, and they're trying to sort through and understand the changes they're experiencing and consequent changing feelings that they can't seem to get a grip of. Huge upsets have the potential to cause them to feel overwhelmed and throw them off what is already a precarious balance. Much of teenage angst comes from trauma in these formative years, and oftentimes parents are too busy in navigating their lives and feelings to truly understand the effects that separation and change in the family dynamics could have on teenagers. Sometimes separation or divorce cannot be helped, and there's no use blaming anyone for actions they could or could not control. No matter the circumstances that caused the separation, there's always pain for all the parties involved. Know this: God does not ignore your pain. Instead, He draws close to your broken heart to bind it up and to hold it in His healing hands. He draws nearer to your crushed spirit, lifting it up with His powerful support. You are never alone after you experience the pain associated with divorce, because God is right beside you. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." I love you, and I'm praying for you.